Steve Kinane reporting there from London. Now back to Australian politics now, and the AMA, the Medical Association, has thrown its support behind privatising some aspects of the Medicare payment system. The coalition had been considering outsourcing some backroom operations but was forced to abandon the plan due to Labor's repeated criticism. Now the AMA says there'd be nothing wrong with handing the payments element over to the private sector, saying the existing system is antiquated, not patient-friendly and in need of a big investment. And Dr Michael Gannon is the president of the Australian Medical Association, and he joins us now from Perth. Michael Gannon, good morning. Now, we'll get specifically to the payment system in a moment, but first, Labor is pushing hard in the last weeks of the election with this argument that Medicare will be under threat of privatisation from a coalition government. Do you believe that argument stands up?
The proposal was only to privatise the payment system. It's nothing to do with visits to the GP, it's nothing to do with public hospital funding. So I'm not sure that that argument can be supported. There are plenty of elements of Labor policy in this election we support. I'm not sure about this allegation.
But Bill Shorten brings up those cuts to pathology, diagnostic imaging and freezing the GP rebate as evidence of the coalition's general attitude towards Medicare.
Well, certainly there are elements of ALP policy in this campaign that the AMA is highly supportive of. We've asked the government to unravel the freeze. The Labor Party's promised to do that. We welcome the ALP's commitments on public hospital funding. We welcome their comments on pathology and radiology. But referring the payment system to the Productivity Commission to see how we can make a 30-year-old system work better, that's not privatising Medicare.
Yeah, so what do you think about bringing those elements into this discussion as a general criticism of the coalition campaign, saying it indicates that it would move towards privatisation?
Well, we've got the Labor Party in front on their promise to unravel the freeze, but this assertion, the evidence just doesn't to back it up. The system doesn't work. Very simply, the proposal was to get the Productivity Commission to look at fixing it. We would support that. Whoever does it, it needs substantial investment.
Yeah. And one other thing Bill Shorten's been saying is that bulk billing would end up being a thing of the past for many Australians under a coalition government. Do you believe that would be an eventuality?
Well, if we don't unravel the freeze, that is a threat to our ability to see the neediest in the community, see doctors at the level of the patient rebate, for the ability for them to be bulk billed. The freeze has to be unravelled at some stage. We've welcomed Labor's commitment to do that in January next year. We would love to see that commitment matched by the government.
Okay, now more specifically to the payment system and then the possible outsourcing of the payment system, would that undermine the philosophy of Medicare, healthcare for all, or would it be a necessary update of the system?
In no way would it undermine our universal healthcare system. When we talk about the sacred cow that is Medicare, what we're talking about is free visits to public hospitals. That must remain. What we're talking about is bulk billed visits to GPs for the most needy in our community. That must stay. But as for modernising a system that in many parts is old and antiquated, that reform is overdue.
How do you feel about the Prime Minister now ruling it out in the heat of this campaign?
Well, I can understand the Prime Minister being sensitive to assertions that the Libs have got Medicare in their sights. I don't think there's any evidence for that, but in a closely fought election campaign, some of these allegations will hurt. We're glad to see health in the middle of the election agenda. We want it to remain there. We want a world-class health system to be preserved for all Australians.
Yeah, so even if the coalition was pressing ahead with the outsourcing of the payment system, could that be criticised as evidence of privatisation plans completely?
There is absolutely no evidence at all that the Liberal Party has any desire to privatise Medicare. They've traditionally been a greater friend of private medicine, but that's a completely different issue. This is very much talking about the payment system, a system that needs substantial investment to fix it. Maybe the private sector could do it better.
So what do you think about Bill Shorten making this such an issue as we come into the last couple of weeks of the campaign, when you basically say what he's saying is rubbish?
Well, I'm delighted to see health at the centre of the election agenda. There are many elements of Labor's policy which are stronger. I'm looking forward to the Liberal Party's a greater commitment to public hospital funding in their launch this weekend. I'd love to hear that there's a medium-term, if not short-term, plan to unravel the freeze. But the AMA is here to talk about the issues one by one, not to play the politics. On this one, I don't think the Labor Party's right.
Yeah. And so, on balance, Michael Gannon, is the AMA going to come down one side or the other with the parties before the actual election day, or are you going to take it, as you say, issue by issue?
The AMA will always deal with this issue by issue. There are elements of Labor Party policy which we're strongly supportive of. I think that these allegations about privatisation of Medicare, there's no evidence at all to support it.
OK, Michael Gannon, thanks for talking to us this morning from Perth.
That's a pleasure.
A US federal grand jury has indicted